I never thought a morning walk to school could rewrite my entire future, that a simple wave from a stranger would become the thread that stitched our broken lives back together. This is the story of a single father, a grieving florist, and the moment one stubborn dandelion forced a love that neither saw coming. For months, it was just part of our routine. My daughter Chloe and I walking past that little flower shop every morning. She'd wave, the woman inside would wave back, and that was it. But Chloe kept pointing her out, asking about her, building a story for a stranger. Until one Tuesday, she didn't just point. She pulled me by the hand straight through the door. The bell above the door chimed, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times from the sidewalk, but never from inside. The air was thick with the scent of damp soil and roses. Chloe marched right up to the counter where the woman stood, frozen, a bundle of peonies in her hands. "Hi," Chloe said, beaming. "I'm Chloe. This is my daddy. We see you every day." The woman, Elena, as I'd learn, looked from my daughter's face to mine, her expression a mix of surprise and something softer, something weary. "I see you too," she said, her voice quieter than I expected. "You're always right on time." Our life had become a series of carefully managed routines. After my wife Sarah passed, every minute was scheduled to keep the grief at bay and to make sure Chloe felt safe. The walk to school was the anchor of our day. 7:45 a.m. out the door, left at the oak tree right at the fire hydrant, past the blue house with the loud dog, and then the flower shop, Petals and Promise, halfway down the block. Chloe started the waving. It was her idea about 3 months after the funeral. She said the lady with the pretty hair looked lonely. I thought it was just a child's imagination, projecting stories onto strangers, but she never missed a day. And the woman, Elena, never failed to wave back. It was a silent transaction of kindness I'd come to depend on without even realizing it. I was barely keeping it together. Sarah's death from a sudden aneurysm left a hole in our world so vast I felt I was constantly leaning over its edge. My job as a freelance graphic designer was flexible, which meant I could do school runs, but it also meant work bled into every quiet, empty hour of the night. Chloe was 5, a whirlwind of questions and energy who needed stability more than anything, so I built walls of routine. Pancakes on Tuesday, pizza on Friday. The same path to school, the same wave. Elena's world, I'd soon discover, was built on similar walls. Petals and Promise had been her husband's dream. Mark, he'd opened it 2 years before he was diagnosed. Cancer quick and brutal. He was gone within 8 months, leaving Elena with a fledgling business, a mountain of medical debt, and a crushing silence in the apartment above the shop. She kept it open. Out of love, out of stubbornness, out of not knowing what else to do. She opened at 7 a.m. and often worked until after dark, the glow from the upstairs window the last light on the block to go out. Our morning wave was, for her, a tiny point of human contact in an otherwise solitary grind. She told me later she'd watch for us, that our predictable passing was a quiet comfort. That first day in the shop, after the introductions, an awkward silence fell. Chloe, however, was on a mission. She'd been clutching something in her small fist the whole walk. She held it up now, a slightly crushed dandelion, its white puffball mostly intact, picked from a crack in the sidewalk. "This is for you," she declared, pushing it toward Elena. "It's a wishing flower. You blow and make a wish and it comes true." Elena looked at the weed, then at Chloe's earnest, hopeful face. She carefully set down the peonies and took the dandelion as if it were the most precious orchid. Her fingers trembled, and then without a sound her composure shattered. A tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek, then another. She brought a hand to her mouth, trying to stifle a sob that broke through anyway. It wasn't a dramatic cry, but a quiet, profound collapse of some inner dam she'd been holding up for years. Chloe's smile faltered, confused. "Did I do something bad?" No, sweetheart," Elena managed, her voice thick. "You did something incredibly good. It's just..." She looked at the dandelion, then at me, her eyes glistening with a pain so raw it felt intrusive to witness. "Today is my wedding anniversary. Mark," he proposed with a dandelion, "said even weeds could be beautiful if you loved them enough." She shook her head, a broken laugh escaping with the tears. "I haven't been given one since." The air left the room. My own grief, a constant dull companion, reached out and touched hers. In that moment she wasn't the kind florist from the window. She was another person drowning just like me. Chloe, sensing the gravity but not the details, climbed onto a small stool behind the counter and wrapped her arms around Elena's waist. That small, instinctive act of comfort was the final thread. Elena bent down, holding my daughter close, her shoulders shaking. I stood there, a stranger in a room charged with a decade's worth of two different sorrows, and felt the rigid architecture of my own routine crack. This wasn't a casual interaction. This was a collision. And when Elena finally looked up at me over Chloe's blonde head, her expression wasn't just one of gratitude. It was a silent SOS, a mirror of my own loneliness I could no longer ignore. We stayed for 15 minutes that stretched into something timeless. Chloe showed Elena every flower in the shop, demanding their names. Elena, wiping her eyes, played along, her voice regaining its soft strength. I bought a small pot of yellow tulips I didn't need, just to have something to do with my hands. As we left, the bell chiming again behind us, Elena stood in the doorway. "Thank you," she said, and it meant more than just for the purchase. The walk to school was quiet. Chloe, holding my hand, finally asked, "Daddy, why was the flower lady so sad?" "She lost someone she loved very much," I said, the explanation too simple and too complex all at once. "Like we lost Mommy." "Yes, sweetheart, like we lost Mommy." Chloe was quiet for the rest of the block. Then, as we reached the school gate, she squeezed my hand. "We should bring her more flowers, the kind from the ground. She likes those." The next morning, our walk felt different. The ritual was the same, but the meaning had shifted. As we approached Petals and Promise, Chloe didn't just wave. She stopped, expecting. Elena was already at the window. She smiled, a real one that reached her eyes, and opened the door. "I made you something," she said to Chloe, holding out a small bracelet woven from green floral wire and tiny, dried lavender buds. "For being so brave with your wishes." Chloe was enchanted. She wore it proudly. That day, we were 5 minutes late for school, and the next day, Chloe had to show Elena her new shoes. We were late again. The silent wave had become a conversation. A doorway had been opened, and without discussing it, we all stepped through. A week after the dandelion, I found myself walking past the shop alone in the late afternoon, returning from the grocery store. Elena was outside, wrestling a heavy bag of potting soil from her delivery step. Before I could think, I set my groceries down. "Here, let me." Our hands brushed during the transfer, a simple, practical touch, but it sent a current through me, so unexpected and acute it felt like a betrayal. Of Sarah, of my grief. I muttered a quick "you're welcome" and hurried away, my heart pounding like I'd run a mile. That night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't escape the truth. The careful, solitary world I'd built for Chloe and me was no longer solitary, and I had no idea if that was a lifeline or a disaster waiting to happen. I tried to pull back, to re-establish the distance of the wave, but Chloe had other plans. The next morning, she packed 2 of her favorite apple juice boxes in her backpack. "One for me and one for Elena," she announced. Resistance was futile, so we stopped, we went in, and we shared a juice box at the counter. It became a new routine. Monday was juice. Wednesday was a drawing Chloe made. Friday was a fancy rock from the playground. I was a man caught in a riptide, pulled away from the safe shore of my isolation by the relentless, joyful tide of my daughter. Each visit chipped away at the formalities. I learned Elena took over the shop at 26, that Mark's favorite flower was the humble sunflower, that the business was barely breaking even, kept afloat only by her grueling 16-hour days and a small life insurance payout that was dwindling fast. One rainy Wednesday, Chloe was running a fever. I kept her home from school, but by afternoon she was stir-crazy. "Can we visit Elena? She has the pretty colors." Desperate for a distraction, I agreed. The shop was empty in the drizzle. Elena took one look at Chloe's flushed cheeks and immediately boiled water for ginger tea. "My grandma's remedy," she said. She didn't just hand me the mug. She showed Chloe the steaming cup, let her smell the ginger, turning the care into a moment of wonder. As Chloe sipped, curled in an armchair Elena kept for reading, Elena quietly said to me, "The invoices are in the back. I'm drowning in them. Any chance your graphic design I can make sense of my filing system? I'll pay you in tulips." It was a pretext, and we both knew it, but I said yes. For an hour while Chloe dozed, I organized her chaotic desk. I saw the stack of past due notices, the shocking thinness of the profit ledger. Her struggle was no longer an abstract concept. It was numbers on a page, and they were devastating. When I emerged, I didn't mention the notices. I just said, "You need a digital system, let me help you set one up." That was the first crack in the dam of professional distance. Helping became our language. I fixed her website, a sad, forgotten page from the Mark era. She started leaving a to-go cup of coffee on the windowsill for me on mornings I looked particularly rough. Chloe began referring to the shop as Elena and our second house. Then came the Saturday. Chloe was at a friend's birthday party. For the first time in months, I had 2 hours completely alone. The silence in my apartment was deafening, a physical weight. Before I could talk myself out of it, I found myself walking to Petals and Promise. The bell chimed. Elena was up a ladder, trying to hang a new spring wreath on a high hook. She wobbled, and my heart leapt into my throat. "Whoa, let me," I said, rushing over. I steadied the ladder, my hands on its sides. She looked down, flustered. "I've got it," she said, but she didn't move. For a suspended second, we just looked at each other. The air hummed with the unspoken. She climbed down, and the space on the small ladder felt incredibly intimate. "Chloe at her party?" she asked, brushing dust from her jeans. "Yeah, quiet." "I know the feeling," she said, gesturing to the empty shop. We had coffee in the back room, surrounded by buckets of flowers. We talked about nothing and everything. The ridiculous price of tulip bulbs, our favorite terrible movies. She asked about Sarah, not in a pitiful way, but with genuine curiosity. "Tell me something about her that makes you smile." And I did. I told her about Sarah's legendary Halloween costumes, how she once turned Chloe into a perfect, grumpy garden gnome. Elena laughed, and it didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like sharing. As I got up to leave, she said, "The coffee's on the house, but the company that I might have to charge you for." Her smile was shy, testing the waters. "What's the going rate?" I asked, matching her tone. "Another Saturday conversation," she said, "when it's quiet." I agreed, and as I walked home, the quiet of my apartment didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like it was waiting to be filled with stories I could tell her. The bridge from helpful neighbor to something more was built on 100 small moments, holding a bouquet while she rang up a customer, our hands touching as we both reached for the same pair of clippers. The way she'd say, "See you tomorrow," instead of "goodbye." Chloe was our constant, joyful chaperone, but in her absence, a new current flowed between us, terrifying and exhilarating. The pivot came from an outside force. A sleek, folded notice arrived in Elena's mail. A property management company was buying the entire block. Her month-to-month lease was being terminated. She had 90 days to vacate. The rent on a new retail space in town was triple what she paid here. Petals and Promise was facing extinction. She showed me the letter, her face pale. "I don't know if I have a fight left in me," she whispered. The confident, resilient woman I saw wrestling with soil bags was gone, replaced by someone staring into the abyss of total loss. This wasn't just a business. It was her last tether to Mark, to the life they dreamed up together. That night I couldn't sleep. A fierce, protective anger burned in my chest. This wasn't fair. She had lost enough. I spent the night hunched over my laptop, not working on client projects, but researching commercial tenant rights, brainstorming crowdfunding campaigns, sketching logos for a potential Save Our Shop movement. I realized with a jolt that my fight-or-flight response wasn't to flee. It was to stand beside her and fight. The next morning, I laid out my ideas. Her eyes widened as I spoke. You did all this for me." "For the shop," I said too quickly, for what it means to the neighborhood." The lie was thin. Chloe, listening intently, piped up. "We can't let the bad guys take Elena's flowers." She made it sound like a superhero mission, and in a way, it was. We became a team. I handled the strategy, the graphics, the online petition. Elena used her connection with every customer to spread the word locally. Chloe drew Save Our Flower Shop pictures we plastered in the window. The crisis forged us into a unit. We spent evenings in the shop's back room, planning, often long after Chloe fell asleep on a bed of empty burlap sacks. One such night, after finalizing a flyer, we stood by the front window looking at Chloe's drawings. Our shoulders were almost touching. The street was dark and still. "I don't know how to thank you," Elena said, her voice soft in the quiet. "You've thrown me a lifeline, more than one." I turned to her. "You don't have to thank me." "I feel like I do," Because this, she gestured between us, this isn't just about saving a store anymore, is it? There it was, the question hanging in the air since the day of the dandelion. The truth I'd been both running from and toward. The air between us crackled. I could see the same fear and hope in her eyes that I felt pounding in my own chest. We were standing on a cliff edge, and the fall could be beautiful, or it could break us all over again. Before I could find an answer, the back room heater, an ancient, groaning thing, gave a final shuddering clang and went silent. A distinct asterisk click echoed through the suddenly quiet shop. The lights flickered, then died, plunging us into darkness. Elena let out a small gasp. The street lamp outside cast a weak, silvery glow through the window, barely illuminating her face. The temperature seemed to drop instantly. "The breaker," she said, her voice tight. "It's been finicky, it's in the basement." I knew what came next. The basement was a cramped, stone-walled space she hated. She never went down there alone. Mark had always handled it. She looked at me, then toward the back, where the basement door was. In that moment, she wasn't a savvy business owner or a resilient widow. She was just a woman, afraid of the dark and the memories in a cold basement, and she was looking to me. The unspoken question between us was replaced by an immediate, practical one. The shop was growing cold. The flowers would suffer. Chloe was sleeping upstairs in her apartment. "I'll go," I said, my voice firm in the dark. "I'll get a flashlight," she said, her hand briefly finding my arm in the darkness, a touch of gratitude and something more. As she moved away, I stared into the pitch-black hallway leading to the basement door, the old house groaning around us. This was no longer about fixing a breaker. It was about stepping into the darkest, most foundational part of her world, and I had no idea what I would find down there. The basement was a time capsule of grief. The air was cold and smelled of damp stone and old fertilizer. My phone's flashlight cut a shaky beam through the darkness, illuminating stacked clay pots, retired holiday decorations, and a thick layer of dust. In the far corner, I found the electrical panel. Next to it, leaning against the stone wall, was a simple wooden rocking chair. A man's flannel shirt was still draped over its back. Mark's chair, a place to sit while he tinkered with things. The intimacy of it, preserved down here in the dark, hit me like a physical thing. I reset the breaker with a solid asterisk thunk asterisk. The furnace groaned back to life upstairs, but as I turned to leave, my light caught a cardboard box tucked under a workbench. It was labeled, in neat block letters, "Legal Financial." Something in the finality of that slash made my stomach tighten. This wasn't the organized folder of invoices on her desk upstairs. This was the archive, the before and after box. I shouldn't have looked, but the lifeline I thought I was throwing her felt suddenly thin, based on the partial truth she'd shown me. I knelt, the cold from the floor seeping through my jeans, and lifted the lid. The top layer was what I expected: Mark's death certificate, the life insurance policy. But beneath that was a second, thicker stack. Loan applications, all marked declined. Final notices from suppliers, some over a year old. And a spreadsheet handwritten that told the real story. The insurance money hadn't just been dwindling, it was gone, spent 6 months ago to cover a catastrophic loss when a faulty cooler ruined an entire wedding season's worth of inventory. The shop had been operating at a severe loss for over a year. She was personally guaranteeing debts with money she didn't have. The eviction notice wasn't the crisis, it was the final nail in a coffin she'd been building for months. She hadn't lied to me, she had just shown me the top of the iceberg, too ashamed to reveal its monstrous depth. The fight I'd been so passionately planning was for a ship that had already taken on too much water. My carefully crafted crowdfunding goal wouldn't cover a tenth of what she actually owed. I climbed the stairs slowly, the box's weight in my arms replaced by the heavier weight of knowledge. The lights were back on. Elena stood in the middle of the shop, hugging herself against the returning warmth. She saw my face, then the box in my hands, all the color drained from hers. "You found it," she said, her voice a flat statement of defeat. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, setting the box on the counter. "The spreadsheet, the losses, Elena, this isn't just about a new lease. The business is insolvent." A single tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. "Because telling you made it real, and because," she broke off, turning away. Because I saw how you looked at me when you thought you could fix it. I needed someone to look at me like that again, not like a lost cause. The confession hung between us, devastating in its honesty. My anger melted, replaced by a profound ache. She hadn't wanted a business partner, she'd wanted a believer, and I had happily played the part, fueled by my own growing feelings. "We can still fight," I said, but the conviction was gone from my voice. "With what?" she whispered, gesturing to the box. "Hope and Wire Crafts. I'm tired, David. I'm so tired of fighting. Maybe it's a sign to let it go." Let it go, the shop, her last connection to Mark, to the future they planned. The thought of her losing this, on top of everything else, was unbearable. But the numbers were the numbers. I was an accountant's son. I knew what they meant. Just then, a small, sleepy voice came from the top of the stairs to her apartment. "Daddy." The noise woke me up. Chloe stood there, rubbing her eyes, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. She saw Alina crying, saw the serious looks on our faces, and her own face crumpled with worry. She padded down the stairs in her footy pajamas and went straight to Alina, pressing herself against her legs. "Don't be sad, Alina," she murmured. Alina's composure broke completely. She sank to her knees, gathering Chloe into a fierce hug, burying her face in my daughter's hair. "I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm trying so hard." I watched them, this woman and my child, entwined in a moment of pure, unguarded need, and the last of my defensive walls crumbled. This wasn't just about saving a flower shop. It was about saving her. And in doing so, maybe saving a part of myself I thought had died with Sarah. "We're not letting it go," I said, the words firm, final. Both of them looked up at me. "We pivot. We don't save Petals and Promise, the store. We save Alina, the florist." The idea came fully formed, as if it had been waiting in the wings. I laid it out there in the quiet shop. The retail rent was impossible, but what about a floral studio with no storefront, a subscription service for local deliveries, workshops in community centers, an online business operated from an affordable rented studio, or even from my home office? I had the space. We could convert the garage. Alina listened, a flicker of the old fight returning to her eyes. "You'd let me run a business from your house." "It's not just my house," I said, looking at Chloe. "It's our home, and homes are for building new things." The word home seemed to echo. Chloe, sensing the shift, brightened. "Alina could live with us, then she wouldn't need a upstairs or a downstairs." Alina and I locked eyes over Chloe's head. The child's innocent solution was so vast, so terrifyingly simple, it sucked the air from the room. It wasn't a business proposal anymore. It was a life proposal. "That's a very big idea, Bug," I said, my voice hoarse. Alina stood up, lifting Chloe with her. "The biggest and best idea," she said, but her smile was wobbly, uncertain. The practical and emotional lines had just blurred into one overwhelming question. We spent the next week in a frantic, hopeful haze. We called it Operation Pivot. We filed paperwork to establish a new home-based business entity. I built a simple e-commerce website. Alina reached out to her loyal customer base, explaining the change. The response was surprisingly warm. People loved her, not just her storefront. But the pressure cooker of our proximity was intensifying. With the eviction clock ticking, Alina was at my house constantly, measuring the garage, setting up her cooler, laughing with Chloe in the kitchen. She fit in a way that was seamless and unnerving. We'd find ourselves moving around each other in the kitchen, a familiar dance learned in the flower shop, now transplanted into the heart of my domestic life. The "wait, it gets worse" moment came from an envelope marked with a law firm's logo. It was addressed to Alina at the shop, but she'd given me her mail key. It was a follow-up letter from the property management company. They weren't just terminating her lease. They were citing a clause about business viability and equipment liens, threatening legal action to seize her remaining floral coolers and inventory to cover back rent if she didn't vacate entirely in 30 days, not 90. They'd found the debts. She was going to lose everything, not just the space, but her tools, her stock, the physical remnants of her trade. The new business plan, built on using her existing equipment, was evaporating. I drove to the property management office, a sleek glass building downtown. I demanded to speak to someone, armed with our petition and our new business plan, a naive foot soldier armed with pamphlets against a tank. The manager, a man in a too-tight suit, barely glanced at them. "Mr. Evans, is it?" Noted. "The tenant's financial distress is unfortunate, but it's also a breach. The lien clause is standard. The equipment will be inventoried and sold. It's business." "It's her livelihood," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Then she should have managed it better," he said flatly. "She has 30 days. Goodbye." I sat in my car in the parking garage, fists clenched on the steering wheel, trembling with a helpless fury I hadn't felt since the doctors told me there was nothing more they could do for Sarah. The system was designed to crush the Alinas of the world. I had no weapons left. When I told her, she didn't cry. She just went very still, looking out the window of my home office at the garage we'd been measuring with such hope. "So that's it," she said quietly. "They take it all." That night, after Chloe was in bed, I found her sitting on my back porch steps. She was looking at the dark, empty garage. "I should just go," she said, not turning around. "Take what little I have left and start over somewhere else. I'm dragging you and Chloe into my shipwreck." "You're not dragging us," I said, sitting beside her. "We are choosing to be here. I'm choosing to be here." She finally looked at me, her eyes glistening in the porch light. Why choose this? Choose me. I'm a financial and emotional disaster zone." I took a deep breath. The truth I'd been carrying since the day in the dark shop, since the dandelion, since 100 moments before and after, could no longer be contained. "Because I love you, Elena." The words hung in the cool night air, simple and enormous. She stared at me, her lips parted in shock. I continued, the floodgate open. "I love your resilience even when you're breaking. I love how you talk to flowers like old friends. I love how you see my daughter, really see her. I love the way you make my house feel like a home again. I'm in love with you, and I don't care about the debt or the coolers or the lawsuits. We'll figure it out, but we figure it out together or not at all." Tears spilled over her lashes. For a long moment, she was silent, searching my face. Then she reached out, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw, a touch so tender it made my breath catch. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too." "I love you too," she said, the words a soft release. "So much it scares me more than any bankruptcy." She leaned in and I met her halfway. The kiss was not a frantic, desperate thing. It was slow, deep, a confirmation and a promise. It tasted of salt tears and hope and the long, hard road we'd both walked to get here. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads resting together, the world had rearranged itself. The battle lines were no longer just around a shop, but around this fragile, brand new thing we just named. "Okay," she breathed. "Together." "Together," I echoed. But together faced an immediate, brutal test. The very next morning, as I was printing revised business plans, my phone rang. It was Jessica, Chloe's mother. Her voice was clipped, urgent. "David, we need to talk. In person, today. It's about Chloe and about that woman." Jessica's concern wasn't about jealousy, it was about fear. We met at a park, neutral ground. She came straight from her office, still in her sleek work attire, a stark contrast to my rumpled dadwear. "Chloe talks about Elena non-stop," she began, not unkindly. "She calls her my flower lady. She says Elena might live with you. David, it's moving so fast. She lost her mother, is getting attached to another woman who could disappear. Is that wise?" Her words weren't an attack. They were the echo of my own deepest terror, spoken aloud by the one person whose worry matched my own. I didn't get defensive. I told her everything. The eviction, the debt, the kiss, the love, the sheer, terrifying gamble we were taking. Jessica listened, her lawyer's mask slipping to reveal the mother beneath. "You love her." "I do. And she's in trouble, financially, I mean." "Up to her neck," I admitted. To my shock, Jessica didn't lecture. She thought for a long moment, watching kids play on the swings. "Chloe deserves stability, but she also deserves to see what love looks like. The kind that fights. If you're fighting for her, then I'm not your enemy," she sighed. "But if this crashes, David, it's Chloe who pays the emotional bill. You know that, right?" I did. The weight of that responsibility was my constant companion. "I know," We're trying to build something solid, but the foundation is complicated." She offered a hesitant smile. "Bring her by for coffee. Let me meet the woman who's making my daughter and my ex-husband so happy." That simple gesture of openness was the first domino. The next fell thanks to an unlikely ally, Marcus, the barista from the cafe in the original transcript who'd become a friend. He heard about the equipment Leon through the neighborhood grapevine. He also had a cousin who worked for a small, sympathetic legal aid nonprofit. He made an introduction. The lawyer, a woman named Anya with tired eyes and a fierce smile, saw the predatory nature of the property management's Leon threat. She fired off a series of letters citing technicalities in the Leon filing and highlighting the devastating impact on a surviving spouse's sole livelihood. She didn't promise to win. She promised to make it a costly, messy fight they might prefer to avoid. It worked. A week later, a revised offer arrived. Vacate in 30 days, leave the building, but take the equipment. A small, brutal mercy. It was still a loss of the physical space, the storefront she'd shared with Mark, but it was the salvation of her tools, her trade. The final Saturday at Petals and Promise was a community wake and a birth. We held a bloom and move sale. Everyone came. Former customers, neighbors, even a few of Jessica's colleagues. Chloe handed out lemonade. Elena, though heartbroken, was radiant in her determination. She sold every vase, every ribbon spool, every pot. What didn't sell, she gave away. As the last customer left, the shop was just an empty room echoing with memory. Elena walked through it once, her hand trailing along the counter. She stopped at the window where she'd waved to us for all those months. "Goodbye," she whispered, to the room, to the ghost, to that chapter of her life. Then she turned to me and Chloe, her eyes clear. "Okay, what's next?" What was next was my chaotic, love-filled garage. We spent a week transforming it. Insulation, drywall, a powerful second-hand cooler, and shelves built from reclaimed wood from the shop's old display tables. It was Petals and Promise. She named the new venture Ground Floor Flowers, because that's where she was starting from. And because, she said with a smile at me, the best things grow from solid ground. The business model was lean, agile, online orders, local delivery, weekend workshops in my backyard. The story of the shop's end and the garage's beginning became part of the brand. People loved it. Orders trickled, then flowed. Elena didn't move in, not officially, but her presence became permanent. She kept her tiny apartment for another 2 months, but she spent every night at our house, her clothes migrating to my closet, her favorite tea appearing in my cabinet. Chloe would pad into our room some mornings and curl up between us, a perfect, warm bundle of contentment. We were a family in all but the legal and residential paperwork. The love we built wasn't a frantic, passionate flame. It was a deep, steady burn that warmed the house from the inside out. We had our fights, about money, about parenting styles, about my occasional retreats into silence. But we always found our way back to each other, usually with Chloe as our unintentional mediator. The final surprising detail came on a Tuesday, exactly 1 year after Chloe first dragged me into the flower shop. I came home from fetching groceries to find the house suspiciously quiet. Then I saw them, Elena and Chloe in the backyard, their backs to me, crouched in the small garden patch we'd started. Chloe was chattering, Elena listening intently. As I got closer, I saw what they were doing. They were planting, not vegetables or fancy blooms. They were carefully transplanting a cluster of dandelions, their fluffy white heads gone, replaced by vibrant yellow flowers, into a small, neat row by the fence. Elena heard me and turned, her face smudged with dirt, her smile brighter than the sun. "We are cultivating wishes," she said. Chloe bounced up. "Yeah, so we always have some, for emergencies." I looked at them, these two souls who had remade my world, planting weeds with the solemnity of botanists tending rare orchids. My throat tightened. This was it. The beautiful, chaotic, perfect life I never knew I needed, growing right out of the cracks. I set the groceries down and joined them in the dirt. Together, we planted a row of yellow hope. That night after Chloe was asleep, I brought out a small box, not an engagement ring, not yet. That would come later, on a quiet evening 6 months after that, when the time was truly right. This box contained a key. a key to the front door on a keychain shaped like a dandelion puff. "Move in," I said. "Officially, let's make this ground floor our only floor." She took the key, her fingers closing around it. "It already is," she said. The eviction notice, the debt, the fear, it all led here. To a crowded, lively garage-turned-studio, to a kitchen perpetually full of the smell of coffee and soil, to a little girl who had gained not a replacement mother, but a fierce and loving Elena. And I had gained not just a partner, but a testament to the fact that love could indeed grow a second time, not over the ruins of the past, but right beside them in a new, wild, and wonderful garden. We didn't get a fairy tale ending where the shop was saved. We got something better, a real-life beginning where the florist was saved, where a father and a daughter found their missing piece, where a simple morning walk didn't just pass by a window, it walked straight into a heart and decided to stay. The story of the wave, the dandelion, and the broken woman who became our strength wasn't about a rescue. It was about a collision of lonely worlds that chose, against all odds, to orbit a common sun. And as I looked at Elena, asleep beside me, her hand curled in mine even in sleep, I finally understood the promise hidden in that first, fateful gesture from my daughter. It wasn't just a wave, it was a signal, and we were finally home. So what is the true weight of a wave? Of a weed picked from a crack in the pavement? Our story proves it can be the weight of an entire new world. It was never about flowers or shops or grand romantic gestures. It was about three people, isolated by their own private grief, who chose to look up, to see each other, and in that seeing to offer the one thing we all secretly need: a place at the table, a moment of recognition, a hand to hold in the dark. We built a family not from scratch, but from salvage. From the broken pieces of what we'd lost, we assembled something sturdier and more beautiful because we knew its worth. Chloe learned that families can expand, that love isn't a finite resource, but a well that deepens the more you draw from it. Elena learned that her strength wasn't in never falling apart, but in having the courage to let someone help piece her back together. And I learned that saying yes to a stranger isn't an act of charity, it's an act of faith in your own capacity to heal. The flower shop is gone, a smoothie place is there now. But every morning when we walk past that window, Chloe still waves, to the memory, to the beginning, to the invisible thread that started there. And now, Elena walks between us, her hand in mine, waving too. This story is a testament to the quiet revolutions that happen on ordinary sidewalks. It's a reminder that the most powerful forces in our lives aren't destiny or fate, but simple human choices. The choice to wave back, the choice to follow your child through an open door, the choice to confess your fear and your love in the same trembling breath. If you take anything from our journey, let it be this: pay attention to the small invitations, the coincidences that feel like nudges, the people who appear in your daily periphery. Your future might not be waiting in a grand plan, but in the stranger you haven't yet offered a seat, in the dandelion you haven't yet picked, in the wave you haven't yet returned. Our door is open, our garden is growing, and our table always has room for one more story. If this one resonated with you, if it reminded you of a small moment that changed your own path, share it in the comments below. Tell me where you're watching from, because these stories of connection are what remind us all that we're not just passing by, we're walking each other home. Thank you for walking with us. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.